Good morning. Welcome on this February 2nd, 2021. And this is our second day back into doing a daily devotion. Gave you the rundown on the book and all yesterday, so we'll be a little shorter today as we make our way through this devotional book by John Stott. Google him. He has a significant impact, has had a significant impact on the Christian world and the church. We're in a week where he's talking about the parables, some of the parables that Jesus taught, and today is the parable of the wheat and the weeds. The wheat and the weeds. Some translations will say the wheat and the tares, depending on which one. It's the same. It's all the same. Tares are weeds. This reading. He cites the parable in Matthew chapter 13, and those of you who come to JCPM know we went through those as we looked through the kingdom of heaven at the end of the year last year. Matthew 13, verse 24 through 30, and then he explains it in verses 36 through 43. So the parable of the wheat and the weeds, let both grow together until the harvest, and that's from Matthew 13:30. This parable introduces us to the strange phenomenon known as nominal Christianity. That is, it is possible to be a Christian in name, not in heart, in appearance, not in reality. The story is clear. There were two sowers, one a farmer and the other his enemy. There were two crops, one wheat and the other weeds. And there would be two harvests, for the weeds would be burned and the wheat garnered. But the same field is in mind throughout. The parable teaches three lessons. Firstly, the church is a mixed community. Just as the field contained both wheat and weeds, so the church contains both believers and unbelievers. Some deny this. They point to verse 38 where Jesus says that the field is the world. But the enemy sowed weeds among the wheat, verse 25, not in a different field. And in the end, evildoers will be gathered out of the kingdom, that is, out of the community that acknowledges Jesus as King. And so the church contains within its membership the true and the false. This justifies the distinction between the visible church, all baptized members, and the invisible church, all who truly belong to Jesus Christ. Secondly, the devil is at work in the church. I am aware that some church leaders no longer believe in the devil, but Jesus did, and that should be enough for us. The devil infiltrates the church with his agents who often look exactly like genuine believers. For the so-called weeds are darnel, which, at least in its early stages, is almost indistinguishable from wheat. Thirdly, the separation will take place at the end. Counterfeit Christians will not be able to preserve their disguise forever. The day of judgment will unmask them. Meanwhile, we should not attempt to do God's sifting and separating work for him. This does not mean, however, that the church should be a totally inclusive community and that there is no room for discipline. Open heretics and open evil doers should be disciplined. But we cannot read hearts, and we must not pass judgment on those who profess and seem to be true believers. It's a difficult situation for sure. We all set our own standards, and that can become a problem when we think here's the measure of a real Christian. And anybody who doesn't meet that measure is not a real Christian from our perspective, but we don't know hearts. And unless there is some open, as he mentioned, some open form of sin or rebellion against the gospel, against the scriptures, um, we must be careful. And so the church is an open place for people to attend, and only God knows our hearts. Um, is there growth in our lives? That's the important part here. If you read this parable, if you go back and read this parable in Matthew 13, you'll see that in the end, the real wheat is determined eventually by what the plants bear, what comes out of that reality. So, what comes out of our lives, the fruit of it, Jesus will say in another place, is the real measure, the real way to tell. Blessings to you today. I pray that your life is growing true to the scriptures and true to the Word of God, and that you have the real deal in your life today, as is defined by Jesus and life lived in obedience to Him. Blessings to you today.